And we are back. Sun Cipher, bringing you part two. Dumb Diversas, the doctrine of perpetual slavery, war, theft, lies, and hijack. That's what we're dealing with right now. We're gonna bring this home and put a capstone on this little scenario. So when I'm done with this, there will be no doubt when we speak about the indigenous, the Algonquin of Amadu Khan, we're speaking about these tribes. Not only the Hebrew Israelite, but all the tribes of Israel. We all resided in this land we called the Americas. From then to now. But as I illustrated in part one, only these Hebrew Israelites garnered the attention of the Vatican from 1452 with these series of papal doctrine or mandates to go out and slay these so-called Saracens wherever they lie, on every piece of rock, dirt, water, air they reside. Go get them, put a foot on their neck perpetually. So we left off with the god Frederick Douglass. We're going to get right back into that. But for those of you who don't know, you are in tune with Black Dot Chronicles. I am your worthy facilitator, Sun Cipher. So you are live inside the lab. So we're going to continue with this because I was just breaking down the god Frederick Douglass, who wrote this essay and was basically banging on the American colonial political establishment, and at the same time the African political establishment, which at the time was just a sliver of land on the continent. They're not even referring to the whole of the continent. They're talking about a slither of land that was ultimately founded by Caucasians who called themselves Afrikaans. All right, so we're gonna keep going with this. Hope everybody's feeling this vibe. Enlightening conversation. Because, you know, we got receipts. All right, so here we go. Frederick Douglass says, the American people are wicked, but they are not fools. They will hardly be disposed to incur the expense, to say nothing of the injustice which this measure demands. Nevertheless, this colonizing scheme, unworthy as it is of American statesmanship and American honor, and though full of mischief to the colored people, seems to have a strong hold on the public mind, and at times has shown much life and vigor. So I've highlighted this one particular pass here, the American people are wicked. I just want to let you know that Frederick Douglass is distinguishing between the American people and the original indigenous American. When he is referring to the American people, he's referring to the Europeans that now applied to the descendants of the Europeans born in America. These are the Americans he's referring to. He's not referring to the natives originally applied to the Aboriginal copper-colored people, the copper-colored races of America. He's talking about these European Americans who came and superseded the indigenous Americans, took our lands, our titles, our equity, our estates, our artifacts, our systems of governance, our spiritual systems, and turned them into religion. The science of life turned into spookism. This is what Frederick Douglass is referring to, these Americans. So we're clear. Let's go. The bad thing about it is that it has of late, owing to persecution, begun to be advocated by colored men of acknowledged ability and learning. Okay? The bad thing about it is that it has of late, owing to persecution, begun to be advocated by colored men of acknowledged ability and learning. And every little while, some white statesman becomes its advocate. So what is Fred saying there? He's saying that it is Negroes who's advocating the most to dislocate all of these indigenous Otonkan Amadu Khans. And every once in a while, a white statesman will come along and co-sign this particular notion. Just so we're clear what's going on here. So who are these colored men of acknowledged ability and learning that were advocating to uproot the indigenous Amadu Khans of North and South America? What clan were they representing? Who are these cats? We'll get into that. All right, let's continue. So those gentlemen will doubtless have their opinion of me. I certainly have mine of them. My opinion is that if they are sensible, they are insincere. And if they are insincere, they are not sensible. They know, or they ought to know, that it would take more money than the cost of the late war, he's referring to the Civil War, to transport even one half of the colored people of the United States to Africa. So he's saying these colonizers are not idiots. More than anything, they care about money, even more so than getting rid of the indigenous people of that land. So he's saying, just by the nature of who these people are, they're not going to spend that dough to excommunicate these indigenous people from America. That's what he's saying. Whether intentionally or not, they are, as I think, simply trifling with an afflicted people. They urge them to look for relief where they ought to know that relief is impossible. So what he's saying here, they came over here and they superseded themselves in between our beef. Yeah. 1 second. All good. Technical difficulty resolved. So here we go. In this last passage I read, whether intentionally or not, they are, as I think, simply trifling with an afflicted people. They urge them to look for relief where they ought to know that relief is impossible. Sounds like the politics of the day, huh? Looking down their nose at people who the politicians put them in a situation and now they look down on them, telling them to pull themselves up by the bootstrap. This is basically what this sentiment is saying here. Whether intentionally or not, they are, as I think, simply trifling with an inflicted people. They urge them to look for relief where they ought to know that relief is impossible. The only excuse they can make for the measure is that there is no hope for the Negro here, and that the colored people in America owe something to Africa. So they're saying, you guys are done. We've taken everything from you. We'll send you over there to Africa with the Afrikaans, which you have no relation to, the land or the people. He continues, the last sentimental idea makes colonization very fascinating to the dreamers of both colors. So once again, he is reiterating that this is not a white thing. In fact, it wasn't even initiated by the colonizers, the Caucasian. He's saying both races, both colors are knee deep into this. So there's another faction of black, swarthy, tawny, copper-colored people, Negroes, that are plotting to get us out of here. And he's saying there's no foundation for it. They tell us that we owe something to our native land. This sounds well, but when the fact is brought to view, which should never be forgotten, that a man can only name one native land, and that is the land in which he is born. Fire. Let me repeat that. They tell us that we owe something to our native land. That sounds well, but when the fact is brought to view, which should never be forgotten, that a man can only name one native land, and that is the land in which he is born. He continues throughout this piece to illustrate that we are the Americans, the Amaru Khan. We are the indigenous people of that land, and we ain't going nowhere. What sense does that make? Let's go. Africa, according to her colonization advocates, is by no means modest in her demands upon us. She calls upon us to send her only our best men. She does not want our riffraff, but our best men. So again, this political structure over in Tunisia, what they're calling Africa, this one little sliver of land, and these Africans, which were Caucasian, he's saying by no means are they making modest demands of us. Speaking of Africa, she calls upon us to send her only our best men. She does not want our riffraff, but our best men. But these are just men who are valuable and who are wanted at home. It is true that we have a few preachers and laymen with the missionary turn of mind whom we may easily spare. So he's saying, if you're going to take anybody, come get all of these preachers and reverends and these sellouts and these boule types. Take them over there to start your new colony. Send them over. We don't need them anyway. We can spare because they're sellouts. What Fred is saying there. Some who possibly do as much as good by going there as by staying here. But this is not the colonization idea. Its advocates want not only the best, but millions of the best. So they want everybody, mass exodus of the indigenous peoples, the copper-colored people of America. Better still, they want the United States government to vote the money to send them there. They do not seem to see that if the government votes money to send the Negro to Africa, that the government may employ means to complete their arrangement and compel us to go. I find this whole section very interesting because, again, you have to understand we're talking about other copper-colored people who initiated this movement to expatriate the Algonquin indigenous Amaru Khan. They initiated, and then occasionally a white boy or two will come in and, co-sign for that. And so that build up a certain amount of momentum. Now you have to think about who in the history of America, when you're speaking about the Back to Africa movement, there's names that Anybody who considers himself a Pan-Africanist or somewhere along that line, you know at least one very popular name who was very instrumental in this Back to Africa movement. I'll leave it there. Frederick Douglass goes on to say, "Now I hold that American Negro owes no more to the Negroes in Africa than he owes to the Negroes in America. There are millions of needy people over there, but there are also millions of needy people over here as well, and the millions in America need intelligent men of their own number to help them." Sound sensible? As much as intelligent men are needed in Africa to help her people. Besides, we have a fight on our hands right here, a fight for the redemption of the whole race. What is Frederick Douglass talking about here? We have a fight on our hands right here, a fight for the redemption of the whole race. What is he referring to? What does he know that he's not putting on face value? And he goes on to say, "And the blow struck successfully for the Negro in America is a blow struck for the Negro in Africa. For until the Negro is respected in America, he needs not expect consideration elsewhere. All this native land talk, however, is nonsense. The native land of the American Negro is America." Boom! Emphatic. In case you had any questions, he's telling you, we are the Native American, you so-called Negroes, you so-called colored, you so-called black. You are the indigenous Otonkan tribes of the Americas, North and South, including the Caribbean islands. That's right, I said it. So he goes on to say, his bones, his muscles, his sinews are all American, raised from the dirt. His ancestors for 270 years have lived and labored and died on American soil, and millions of his posterity have inherited Caucasian blood. Interesting. It is pertinent, therefore, to ask, in the view of this admixture, as well as in view of other facts, where the people of this mixed race are to go. For their ancestors are white and black, and it will be difficult to find their native land anywhere outside of America. But the worst thing, perhaps, about the colonization nonsense is that it tends to throw over the Negro a mantle of despair, right? You don't have a land of your own. We only have a history of slavery. That's the narrative that they've been pushing from then to now. It leads him to doubt the possibility of his progress as an American citizen. It also encourages popular prejudice with the hope that by persecution, the Negro can finally be dislodged and driven from his natural home. So they basically figured the establishment of the day, the political colonizing machine of the day, thought that they could just persecute us and basically poke fun of us, call us everything that we're not, take over our titles, our lands, our names, our customs, and try to kick us off the land. So while in the nature of the case he must stay here and will stay here, if for no other reason than because he cannot well get away. I object to the colonization scheme because it tends to weaken the Negro. It tends to weaken the Negro holds on one country. While it can give no rational hope of another, its tendency is to make him despondent and doubtful, where he should feel assured and confident. It forces upon him the idea that he is forever doomed to be a stranger and a sojourner in the land of his birth, and that he has no permanent abiding place. What has changed from then to now? 1858 until 2021. What has changed from then to now? We're probably more despondent. Over half of us, 3/4 of us have no idea there's any other narrative beside that we are slaves and we came over on slave ships. when the fact of the matter is, they were attempting to put us on slave ships as prisoners of war, wars that we were fighting from 1400s. And these wars that we were fighting were with European Negroes who decided that they were going to bring slavery to the shores of America. And those first slaves that they brought over were Eastern European whites from the Slavic region. These were the first slaves. Ultimately, they will become indentured servants as time would pass. But they were the first slaves that were in America. Don't get it twisted. So he goes on to say, all this is hurtful. With such ideas constantly flaunted before him, he cannot easily set himself to work to better his condition in such ways as are open to him here. It sets him to groping everlastingly after the impossible. Even man who thinks at all must know that home is the fountainhead, the inspiration, the fountain and main support, not only of all social virtue, but of all motives to human progress, and that no people can prosper or amount to much unless they have a home or the hope of a home. A man who has no such an object either in possession or in prospect is a nobody and will never be anything else. To have a home, the Negro must have a country, and he is an enemy to the moral progress of the Negro, whether he knows it or not. Who calls upon him to break up his home in this country for an uncertain home in Africa? But the agitation on this subject has a darker side still. It has already been given out that if we do not go out of our own accord, we may be forced to go at the point of the bayonet. It cannot say that we shall not have to face this hardship. But badly as I think of the tendency of our times, I do not think that American settlement will ever reach a condition which will make the expulsion of the Negro from the United States by any such means possible. So he's saying you can try all you want. We're never leaving this place. It's ours. We've been here way long. I'm not talking a couple of thousand years. I'm talking about prehistoric and beyond. On record. Yeah, we got them receipts too. And he closes out by saying, yet the way to make it possible is to predict it. There are people in the world who know how to bring their own prophecies to pass. Pre-predicted programming is what he's referring to. The best way to get up a mob is to say there will be one. We see this all the time. Tactic they use from then to now, right? And this is what is being done. Colonization is no solution but an evasion. It is not repentance but putting the wrong ones out of our presence. It is not atonement but banishment. It is not love but hate. Its reiteration and agitation only serves to fan the flame of popular prejudice and to add insult to injury. The righteous judgment of mankind will say if the American people could endure the Negro's presence while a slave, they certainly can and ought to endure his presence as a free man. If they could tolerate him when he was a heathen, they might bear him with they might bear with him know that he is a Christian. If they could bear with him when ignorant and degraded, they should bear with him now. He is a gentleman and a scholar. But even the southern whites have an interest in this question. Woe to the South when it no longer has the strong arm of the Negro to till its soil, and woe to that nation when it should employ the sword to drive Negro from his native land. Such crime against justice, such a crime against gratitude, should it ever be attempted, would certainly bring a national punishment which would cause the earth to shudder. It would bring a stain upon the nation, honor, like the blood of Lady Macbeth's hand. The waters of all oceans would not suffice to wash out the infamy, but the nation will commit no such crime. But in regard to this point of our future, my mind is easy. We are here and are here to stay. It is well for us and well for the American people to rest upon this as final. These are the words of Frederick Douglass. This is an essay that the guy penned in, 1894. I think I said 1858 before, but this was penned in 1894, January 9. It's called The Folly of Colonization. Very powerful piece of documentation. And it's good to have such strong words on record so as we follow these breadcrumbs. Right? So we looked up in the etymology dictionary the definitions of American, of Africa, of African, of the Saracen, the pagan, the terms Tawny, Swarty, and we spoke about and we read about this term copper-colored people, which was specifically given to these individuals of the Americas and Caribbean islands. So going back to the papal bull, the Diversas, Juneteenth, 1452. This is the decree of war, perpetual war, that has been waged officially from 1452 by the Vatican and those who support the Vatican adjacent, all-out war against the Hebrew Israelites. All-out war, perpetually. So I'm going to take a quick break for about 30 seconds, grab a drink of water, and we're going to come back to close this out with some visuals. So in Cypher, facilitator number 1, Black Dot Chronicles. One, two, 1, 2, 1, 2. Yeah. So to close this out, I just want to remind you of this 3-piece document of war, perpetual war against these Hebrew Israelites. They call all of these different names throughout the years. Saracen, pagans, non-believers. They called us Christians, except for they called us a certain sect of Christians, which we'll get into in later installments. But only thing that you need to know was, for some strange reason, they hated our guts so much. Initiated by Pope Nicholas V and initially carried out by King Alfonso of Portugal. Had a direct mandate to invade, search out, capture, vanquish, and subdue all Saracens and pagans whatsoever. If you don't know what Saracens and pagans are, go check out part 1 of this installment. Documentation's there. And other enemies of Christ whatsoever placed, and the kingdoms, dukedoms, principalities, dominions, possessions, and all movable and immovable goods whatsoever held and possessed by them, and to reduce their persons to perpetual slavery, and to apply appropriate to himself and his successors the kingdoms, dukedoms, counties, principalities, dominions, possessions, and goods, and to convert them to his and their use and profit. So it's not bad enough that they came over to take your lands and doom you to a lifetime of perpetual slavery and servitude. They also stuck it in further, and they took your titles, your principalities, the names of your lands, the titles of your eloquence and greatness. They created a whole chivalry system off of your system of nobility in Europe. They come up to Americas and they superimpose this new system over an ancient system. They drowned out the ancient love song. So make no mistake about what's going on. From then to now, the mandate has remained intact and continue to be executed. Now, to bring this home and to close this out, we're going to deal with some imagery, some official documentation over the years. As I said before in earlier videos, if you haven't seen any of that, check it out. But it's not enough to just say that all these copper colored people, all these tawny type people, all these swart colored people, all these black individuals populated these lands of the Americas. Sometimes that's not enough. People need to be shown. Visualization is everything, right? So let's go here. This is a book entitled An American Emblem, published in 1801, publishing house out of London. This is in the British Museum. They're saying it's an allegorical figure shown full length, standing to left, head titled to right, wearing a leopard skin. Museums are, of course, the main support for the albinos' false histories. In this case, the animal skin is called a leopard skin to imply that the figure is African or somehow associated with Africa. Actually, the headdress suggests that one of the black Californian tribes, and the spotted animal skin could be ocelot, California bobcat, or Canadian lynx. You'll see this quite a lot in the Hijack. They try to associate everything to Africa. Okay? But we know better than that. Let's keep it moving. Again, indigenous peoples of the Americas, North and South. So this is entitled An Aztec Couple, members of the once great Mexican tribe. This is from El Salvador. The Pipil, P-I-P-I-L, descendants of the Aztecs, a predominant tribe in the region prior to Spanish conquest. They named their territory and capital Cuscatlan, or Cusco. I'm sure that's where that come from. That means the land of the jewel. So this was the name of El Salvador before El Salvador. The land of the jewel. Cuscatlan. Okay? You seeing this? These is in your library of congresses, your museums. Some of these books you can actually still find online, if you're lucky. Another portrait from 1834, Telmazaza, a warrior of distinction, Creek Indian, painted at Fort Gibson in 1834 by George Catlin, and that's in the Smithsonian Institute, like most of our artifacts. And here you have a native sister with the big earrings, the bambino on back. And the caption says, a female savage of Tierra del Fuego, engraving from a drawing by Johann Il, whatever, 1794. Tierra del Fuego is an archipelago off the southernmost tip of South American mainland across the Strait of Magellan. The archipelago is divided between Chile and Argentina. Much later on, we're going to get into ancient maps or older maps. I wouldn't even say ancient maps from 1300 and on. I will show you these maps. We will go over these maps in heavy scrutiny and show you some things. But this landmass that they're speaking of, Tierra del Fuego, quite interesting. We'll get into that. Again, it is a male figure, same thing from the same time period, from the same individual, from this landmass called Tierra del Fuego, land of fire. Remember that, the land of fire. Quite ironic when I show you this. Again, this is a depiction from a book of Montezuma, who we've heard amazing tales about over the years. This is called Montezuma Rex Ultimus Mexicanorum, Mexican Montezuma, basically. This was from 1671. Again, all this information somewhere hidden in dusty rooms in London. Here you have a crew of Indians from the Bay Area of San Francisco. This was taken by or drawn by Lois Corris in 1816. All right, so you notice again, all up and down the Americas, all these different regions, all these different nations, the skin color, the hair texture, the facial features, all of these things vary, just like in any natural African family or black family or indigenous family in America. I know in my own family, my uncles and aunties, if you look at all of them, I have uncles that are split black, and my mom is 2 tones lighter than me. And they all come from the same father and the same mother. So you know how we do. Let's keep this moving. You're looking at a painting done by Jose Cardero from 1816. It says the Ohione people performing a ceremonial dance at Mission San Jose. All right. So again, this is another California tribe, the Ohione, and this is a ceremonial dance. And here you are looking at, this is Northeast America, New Netherlands apparel. You see, looks like a husband and a wife and a adolescent child, daughter in the background, grabbing fruits and probably food for the week or the day at least. So this is around Pennsylvania, Cape Cod, New York, New Jersey, Delaware, and Connecticut. And they had small outposts in Pennsylvania and Rhode Island. So this is a pretty massive tribe. They covered a lot of land. Again, as you can clearly see, these are original depictions from white Europeans that were coming here from 1400s on. This is from 1781 by Jonathan Carver, man and woman of the Atiguamis, the Fox Indians for short, out of Wisconsin. Again, clearly these copper-colored, these tawny, these swarthy individuals, these tribes, these nations of the Americas. This is a tribe from the Mississippi Delta. First of all, peep out the swag. Look at the headdress. Check out the gear. Check out the drip. Check out that fro. You know what I'm saying? Alright, so it says What you're seeing here is a deputation of Indians from the Mississippi tribes to the Governor General of British North America, Sir George Prevost Baronet Lusui, or Lissu, General in 1814, photo by or drawing by Rudolph von Steiger. The scene depicts an official Indian delegation at the end of the War of 1812. Missouri History Museum. So again, I'm showing you the receipts. We got them all. All right. Now this is from 1816 to 1831. Native South Americans, done by John Baptiste de Bret or Johann Moritz Ugindas, for your reference. And again, South American depiction of the natives of that time from 1816 to 1831. Now this is, I think, Saint Vincent. What you're basically witnessing here is a depiction of a treaty between, so it says, the original painting depicts what is believed to be the climax of the First Carib War on Saint Vincent, when in Feb 1773, a treaty was made between the British and the main black Carib chiefs. Chateaubriand, prominent among them, Agostino Brunia, circa 1773. After converted to engraving, falsely titled the Brian Edwards in History as Pacification with Maroon Negroes, Jamaica. Whatever that means. So basically that's what you're essentially looking at, a depiction of some type of truce, ceasefire between these natives of St. Vincent and these Caucasian invaders. Again, another depiction from 1765 to 1768 of this individual chief, Chatoya, and his wife and kid, or his wives, plural. So we've got tons of them. I will continue to produce such receipts and artifacts as we move through this. And again, this is a very vast subject. It is not a small amount of material to cover, so this could take years. This is a journey, so buckle up. I trust that this has been fruitful and knowledgeable and refreshing for some. For those who may have something, how could you say, derogatory maybe, or negative, or may have a different opinion. Opinions don't matter. It's all about receipts. I'm just laying them out. I'm just giving you the groundwork. This is the preface. All right? We haven't even gotten to the intro yet. I'm just breaking bread to show you these Saracens, these pagans that Nicholas V wrote about, that occupied the four corners of the planet, from Moscow to Peru to Tamil Nadu. That certain tribes of the Israelites, specifically the Hebrews, and tangentially the tribe of Judah, they're at your head. So I guess it's just a matter, and we know that this is not a Caucasian thing. This is not a white thing. If you go check out my earlier installments on the same topic, you'll see that the incursions that were made on America, these individuals that were coming over, like Columbus, and alongside Columbus, they were black and brown, tawny, swarthy. Later on came the Caucasians. But for the first couple hundred years, all of these wars that you're hearing about in America, these are these tribes that I've shown you a few selections of, versus these slave traders and colonizers from Europe that were in fact black, tawny, swarthy, copper colored, all of these things. And these are in fact the individuals who were promoting the excommunication of the indigenous man and woman, specifically of North America. So there's a lot to get into. A lot of things have been misleading on both sides of the history of the Americas with regards to who really were actually the slaves and who really were actually the individuals that were here when they got here. What language they spoke, what language we spoke, and our customs. Paleo Hebrew was the communication vessel, and our customs go back way beyond the Bible. So that's about it for now. I'm going to leave it there. My next piece on this particular topic, I'll show you some artifacts that have been found in and around the Americas that will give more validity to what I am saying. The Native Americans that they have presented to you for the past 150, 180, 200 years. These are not the cats that were just here even from like the 1800s. They didn't look like that. So we're going to talk about all of that. We're going to get into it. And if you have any questions or comments, agreements, disagreements, whatever it is, suggestions, holla at me on YouTube, Black Dot Chronicles, Twitter, same. And I'm pretty sure I'm on Instagram as well. Once again, I am your humble facilitator, Son Cypher. We are live inside Soda Sound Lab, and you have been in tune with Black Dot Chronicles. Until next time, stay up, stay focused, and always stay on that short and narrow.